Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Powwow episode, I'm very excited to have Derek Rydall back here with me on the show once again. Derek originally stopped by to discuss the Law of Emergence last year on episode 381, and it's an episode that definitely sticks out in my mind because there's so much powerful insight shared by Derek in our conversation. So if you haven't checked out that episode, I highly recommend you dive back into the archives and give it a listen. As for now, we're going to talk about the ever important topic of abundance. And Derek is going to give us a glimpse into his brand new book that is about to be released called The Abundance Project. And happy to have you back, Derek. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks, man. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be here, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I was saying before we started recording a moment ago, I talked to a lot of amazing people, and our conversation, a little over a year ago on episode 381 really sticks out to me because you had so many amazing sayings and quotes, and I'm such a nerd for good quotes that just pack all the information into a few words, and it's oh wow, I'm keeping that one. So I even remember afterwards thinking I need to go back and write some of those down because there were so many good ones. So I definitely recommend people going back and checking it out.
Hopefully I'll have some new ones for you today.
Yeah, no pressure. You're oh man, I blew my load on the last one. I hope I've got some new stuff for this guy.
I'm what can I say that's clever?
So my new clever little saying that I've always, called them interview episodes. And then, of course, right, I never have a shortage of things to say. And I started thinking about it, and this is the first time I did it. I was well, these are really more of powwows. And then once again, being the nerd I am for clever sayings, I was no, I'm going to call them powwows, P-A-L. So you're the first one that got introduced as my powwow episode. So yeah, sorry guys.
Awesome.
All my listeners know I'm kind of dorky. So what can I say?
Me too, man. We're all freaks. We gotta let our freak flag fly, man.
You gotta let it fly. Otherwise, it gets really weird when you start repressing, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about money. I instantly think of, abundance, of course, being connected to money. And my brother, whose middle name is actually Derek, he does funny imitations of all of our relatives. And I have a uncle deep in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, and he is obsessed with money. So as soon as I say that, I hear in my head my brother doing an imitation of my Uncle Danny. So when you talk about money, so if you want to talk, whenever you're talking about money, he does a much better imitation of my uncle, but it's something like that.
I love it. I love the inflection in money when you talk about money. That's great.
Exactly. He's a really cool uncle too, but he likes to talk about money. So maybe I should send him this episode. I don't know if he's ever listened to my podcast, but I'm gonna send him this one. I think since he started it.
Depending on how he talks about money and thinks about money, for 99% of people, it will radically change the way they look at money or think about money. And for some people, they might be like, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about. I just want more money. But yeah, I mean, abundance isn't money per se, and we'll talk about this for sure. Abundance is the substance of all of creation. That abundance is the thing that shows up as money, shows up as your body, shows up as health, wealth, happiness, love. It's the substance of all creation. And one of the things I talk about, and we'll dive into this probably, is the equation, what I call the abundance principle. The equation is that the volume and velocity, or the quantity and quality of circulation, equals the level of abundance. And that circulation is the key word, because wherever there's increased circulation, there's greater energy, there's greater growth, there's green, and that literally is money or in nature. Wherever there's a system, whether it's natural or not natural, circulation is the foundation. If that circuit is broken, growth, energy stops, power reduces, and growth ultimately comes to a halt. And then it even goes into stagnation, and stagnation is the beginning of the death of a system. So circulation is the lifeblood of abundance, whether it's in your body, in nature, in a body of water. If you don't have circulation, you have a swamp. So that's a really critical thing. And if you look at some of the words we use for wealth, like currency, right? That comes from a word, same root for current, flow. And we look at affluent, which means wealthy. That comes from a root that means to flow or to flow into. So we start to see that flow and circulation and current and a circuit, that these are all words that are all connected, and that wealth and abundance is directly connected to having solid, strong circuits, abundant circulation. And we'll talk what that means. Like, it means you need to circulate your life, your energy, your talents, your gifts, your treasure, the qualities of who you are. And then we can jump back to the foundation of emergence, which is where this work really emerges from. Is one of my most popular programs is one called Awakened Wealth. And it's based on the fourth stage of the emergence process, which says whatever's missing is what you're not giving. And so the reason is because the principle of emergence is that everything is within you already. Life doesn't happen to you. It happens through you and from you. The oak tree doesn't happen to an acorn. It emerges from the acorn. The apple tree emerges from the apple seed. All of nature, all of life is emergent. The galaxy didn't happen. The universe didn't happen to the Big Bang, to the dark void of space. It emerged out of it. So emergence is the foundation of all of life. Everything is emerging. And we know that now in quantum physics as well, that there's already these ideas, these patterns, these prototypes. Plato called it the realm of perfect forms before we knew a word called the quantum field. And when the conditions are right, that which is true but merely potential emerges. Okay, so this is connecting a lot of dots. So the same thing is true with us, that whatever is therefore not in our life right now isn't something we want to wait for, isn't something that we want to merely attract, or something that's going to come to us. It's giving us a signal that we need to let more come out of us. If you want something more to come into your life, you have to let something more come out of you. So it's all about the circulating and the expressing of what's already in you. And then I'll briefly talk about the law of circulation. Then we can jump back to the real nature of money. I'm just trying to lay some foundations for people so they can understand and it doesn't become too jargony. So the law of circulation says that you can't give what you don't have, you can't keep what you don't give, and you can't sustain what you won't receive. So you need to have it, give it, and receive it. That's one complete cycle or circuit, right? And you look at breath. You got to breathe in first. You got to have oxygen. Then you got to release that oxygen, or which really carbon monoxide, into the atmosphere. And then you got to breathe more oxygen back in again. And if you just do one or two of those, you'll die. So it's an all or nothing equation. And the reason is because it's a circuit. And so now the thing about natural circuits is that you can't fake it, right? You either abide by it or you die or you don't get results. You know, if you have a body of water, as I said, and it doesn't have an inlet and an outlet so that there's a circuit, it will turn into a swamp and it will die. The water will start to die and become of no value and in fact become dangerous. If you have an environment, you have your house plants and there's not an ability, you're not putting water in, and also the way to let it come through and then ultimately come out again, the circuit's broken and the plant will eventually die in most cases, unless it evaporates, which is another way it releases. So it's got to always be a circuit. And of course, we know in our body, if the arteries clog up and things aren't circulating, you get problems. So, but we can fake it a lot, and we can, we can get by for a long time thinking we don't have a problem until the problem gets big. You know, if you're in a relationship and you're not loving yourself, which is having it, you're not giving your love, which is the releasing it, and you're not receiving love back, eventually the quality of that relationship and the quality of your experience in it will become diminished. Then you'll create coping mechanisms and neurotic patterns to compensate for this broken circuit. And it could be love, or it could be validation, appreciation, respect at your place of work, whatever. And so what I mean by we can fake it temporarily is, and go against nature is, we have lots of relationships and a lot of heart-centered, conscientious people where we're giving a lot. We're just giving with the belief that eventually we'll get something in return. But we're not giving it to ourselves first. We're not loving ourselves. We're just taking care of everybody else. We're saying no to our yes, but yes to everybody else. That's a broken circuit. And we can, again, go for a while not realizing that we're literally gasping for air because we're not breathing in at all. But eventually it shows up as resentment, bitterness, burnout, overwhelm, and other forms of breakdown in our life. So that's why it's important, that there's principles here. And as human beings, we can trick ourselves into thinking they don't apply to us, but in nature, you can't fake it. You can't wait till the day before the harvest comes and cram all your planting in and think it's going to suddenly bloom the next day. You'll have nothing. You'll have a field of dead seeds. It's not going to grow. So that's why it's important to understand these underlying principles. So circulation is key. Circulation is going to be the key here. And in my book, The Abundance Project, I talk about wherever you're stagnating, there's a broken circuit, there's a lack of circulation, and then I walk people step by step through how to start generating massive circulation in your life again, and specifically diagnose the areas where it's not flowing, where the channels have become calcified and corroded and blocked. Now, we'll jump back to that. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, and of course we're going to tell people at the end how they can get the book and everything like that. And what's great about this is it's sort of like a Cliff Notes version, high level version, glimpse
Correct.
into how deep you go, and the other programs that you offer to sort of really drive this stuff home. I sort of jumped in when you were talking there, but to me that instantly got me excited. How do people identify when and where they are sort of breaking the circuit?
Yeah, so there's certainly obvious ways in the sense that, you can see stagnation showing up in your life in different areas. And The challenge is that where stagnation may show up isn't necessarily where you immediately need to be putting all your energy or efforts. Like, for example, one of the frameworks of the Abundance Project and the Abundance Principle is this, what I call the 7 gifts. These are the 7 gifts that give you everything, or they can also be called the 7 wealth activators or the 7 channels of circulation, whatever term works for you. But there's 7 basic ways or areas in which you can start circulating. We can dive into them at some point, but I'll just briefly say it's giving out, giving away, giving up, giving in, giving thanks, giving to yourself, and forgiving. Those are the 7 gifts that when you understand them and begin to practice them regularly until they become habit, you will have incredible circulation going on in your life. And for example, forgive wherever there's debt in your life, there's almost always a story of unforgiveness. So
wow. So that's wild, because I've just had in the last few days, like a powerful story that I've even shared on the show with listeners. And of course, we're recording this and it'll be released a few weeks from now. But in the last few days, I've released episodes about an ex, a credit card debt, a lot of unforgiveness, and sort of shared this ongoing story publicly with people. So you definitely hit the nail on the head there. It's like there's definitely some unforgiveness there, and wow, that definitely strikes a chord.
Yeah, and let me just briefly talk about why that is so, is that when you think about when you're not forgiving someone or not forgiving yourself, you're saying, in a sense, I owe you or you owe me. Mm-hmm. You're saying, you owe me time, you owe me money, you owe me those years back, you owe me an apology, you owe me an explanation. In some way, you're holding them in debt. You get it? Or you're holding yourself in debt. I owe you this, I owe you that. What happens when you have a bunch of IOUs? And so, what happens is that, remember, from the core premise, whatever's missing is what you're not giving. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens through you. And we can certainly talk more about that. For some, like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Life's happening to me all the time. It looks like that at the level of cause and effect in Newtonian physics. But in the quantum level, that is not at all what's happening. But and we can go into that more if we need to, but believe me when I tell you, life is not happening to you. It's an optical illusion. Even Einstein said our sense of separation from each other is an optical illusion. He might have even called it a delusion. But in any case, so what that means is, for more to come into your life, it has to come out of you in some way, emotionally, mentally, in consciousness, physically. Something you have to bring more to your life to have more in your life. So if you're not forgiving somebody, you're basically saying, I'm withholding from them. So I'm not going to give them love. I'm not going to give them acceptance, compassion, understanding, anything. And so in that area of your mind and your heart, you now have stopped circulation. You have said, I will not let love flow here. I will not let peace or joy or any, and not only have you stopped circulation of those qualities, which means to that extent, those qualities cannot express in your life. Think of it like you have a big channel through which the love flows, and all these places where you're saying, they don't deserve my love, they don't get my love, they don't get my love, he, she, it. It's like calcification and corrosion happening until that channel is very, very narrow and just a little bit of drips can come out of it. So you think you're hurting them. You think you're somehow being strong, but what you've actually done is stopped or greatly diminished the flow of that quality in your life. That's why the old saying, not forgiving somebody is like drinking poison and thinking it's going to make them sick. So then that means that flow isn't happening in your life. It stagnates, and it shows up as stagnation in your life. And oftentimes it shows up as debt, because the essence of unforgiveness is you owe me or I owe you. We are holding each other in debt. And so that consciousness of debt shows up often as literal debt. Right. And so what we want to become, we want to become more like nature, more like the sun, which gives of itself unconditionally. The sun doesn't go, doesn't care what you think about the sun. It doesn't care if you hate it, like it, love it, put on sunscreen, a hat, sunglasses, or pull your blinds down. It's going to shine on you anyway. Why? Because it's the ultimate selfish act. Because if the sun shut down every beam that was shining on someone that hated it, didn't like it, disrespected it, eventually the sun would go out. And so we have to shine the same way. Now, that doesn't mean you should be in business with somebody that you don't trust, or that you should be in a relationship with somebody. Even if you ultimately completely forgive and feel nothing but love and compassion, there is still wisdom and discernment. I have nothing but love for them. I want nothing but the very best for them. And I mean it. When I think about them, when I see them, all I feel is love, compassion, and understanding. And I'm not going to hang out with them or do business with them. So those are not mutually exclusive. So that's why, so this gives you an idea, but each one of these gifts or activators or circulators opens up the field and starts the circulation going. And sometimes, like I said, you're struggling to eliminate your debt over here, but the real problem is one of these channels. So that's why ultimately I invite people to do all of them, or when you hear them, you'll identify what is most charged for you. But before we dive more deep into that, if this is okay, I would like to kind of jump back to where we started and talk about money, because people, obviously, that's a big one. And and one of the things we have, and it's connected to all of this, is understanding what the real nature of money and the real source of it, the real source and nature of wealth. And so the first thing to understand is that money is not wealth. Money is a symbol of wealth. It's a symbol of abundance, right? And just like a fruit tree, it's covered
like an effect, right?
It's an effect, exactly. It's a byproduct, it's an effect, it's a symbol. And so when the fruit trees are all empty of fruit, the farmer doesn't go, well, these trees are all broke, let's cut them down, right? She sees these trees as being as wealthy as they were before, and knows in due season, if she keeps the soil healthy and the roots healthy, in due season, they will produce a harvest and a harvest and a harvest, one after the other. So the wealth isn't the fruit. And in fact, if the tree had self-consciousness and could hold on to the fruit, thinking, oh my God, this is my wealth, this is my meaning. If I let all the fruit go, what if I never have any more fruit? Those fruits will rot, those branches will stagnate, and that tree could eventually die or stop, or it certainly won't be able to produce more fruit as long as it's holding on to the rotten fruit on its branches. So, and the fruit is ultimately of no use to the tree. That's the other thing. The tree doesn't need the fruit. That is the fruit of the tree. That is the byproduct of the tree. That is the gift the tree is here to give to the world. So, so the dollar bills don't do us any good. They need to circulate. And so the fruit, the dollars, the stocks, the bonds, the houses, the jobs, all these things are symbols of wealth and abundance. They're not the wealth itself. The wealth itself is the invisible mechanism in the tree that allows it to produce the sap and the blossom and the marble and the flower and the fruit. It's something invisible. And they've even done studies where they measured the volume of soil in a tub, a controlled environment, with a tree in it, blossomed the fruit, pulled the tree out, shook all the dirt off it, remeasured the volume of the soil, and the volume of the soil had not changed, which means the tree didn't take from the soil. Now, if you over-farm and overgrow, you do diminish the soil. That's just because you're out of balance with the rhythms. But the tree used the soil as a condition to activate this invisible potential and ultimately turn it into fruit. And if that sounds woo-woo to people, this idea that wealth or abundance is invisible, like it does to a lot of scientists and materialists, science that believe in the dogma of materiality, of matter being the foundation of all life. A lot of scientists believe consciousness or intelligence is an emergent property of matter. Meaning, if enough atoms come together and smash together in the right way, it'll produce intelligence, which is just so crazy on the surface. But that's like saying, yeah, if I just blew up a junkyard for billions of years, eventually it would form into a Boeing 747. It's like, no, it wouldn't even form into anything cohesive or intelligent, let alone anything complexity. But that's a whole nother story. But they believe in the Big Bang. And the Big Bang was what? There was nothing, and then there was everything. And so all the stuff came from non-stuff. And it came from nothing or no thing, but what it really came from, there wasn't even time. But what it came from was this womb of creation, this invisible intelligence and substance, the same thing that's at play in nature, and ultimately the same thing that's at work within us. So the abundance principle basically says that we have been designed to be able to create and manifest abundance in our life regardless of the conditions. Because we're not taking it
That's
from,
powerful.
Right? Because we're not taking it from the environment. We're not taking it from the conditions. It's not a zero-sum game. It's an infinite-sum game. And the more we learn to not lean on resource, but on the source within us, then we there you go. There's one for you. There's
one. Got it. You get your gold star.
That's hilarious. Derek. So then we start to activate this divine power plant within us, or whatever term you want to call, and we start to be able to generate out of seeming nothing, but the nothing is really rich and ripe with the substance of everything. It's intelligent. It's substantial. Just like the atom is 99.999 empty space, it's not really empty. It's a cloud of energy and information that contains infinite possibilities. So anyways, we can go down the rabbit hole scientifically and quantum physics and all that. But the bottom line is that the fruit, the dollar bills, all of this stuff, it's not the wealth. It's a symbol. Now we can go to and the wealth is in you. The substance is in you. It's like the goose and the golden egg that's producing all these golden eggs. They decide, let's get all the gold. They cut the goose open. There's nothing in there but goose. And the goose itself and its the internal intelligence is what's producing the gold. And that's the truth about us.
It's an alchemist.
It's an alchemist, exactly. And that's what we are. And this alchemy is invisible and internal. And you take just the beginning flavor and vibration of abundance, you can start to alchemize that and feel so abundant. And then you can start circulating and generating that energy, and it will begin to manifest as opportunities and various abundance in various ways. But then we can look at a famous saying, money is the root of all evil, which actually is the love of money is the root of all evil. And so most people get the saying wrong just to begin with. They think it's just money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money.
Right.
But now in understanding what money is, it's a symbol of wealth, not wealth itself. We can understand the saying a little more. What it's saying is the love of the symbols of wealth is the root of all evil, right? And this is a biblical truth because there's other sayings that are saying the same thing, but in different ways, like thou shalt have no other gods before me, that you should not create any idols outside of me. All of those are trying to say, when you make something outside of you your source, your God, whatever you believe in, but basically if you make something outside of you your source of safety, security, support, supply, ultimately you have disconnected from your real source and your real power within you, and the universe will start to fail you because that thing outside of you is not your source. Those dollar bills are not your source. What do we do when we believe the dollar bills are our wealth? we do a lot of crazy things. We manipulate, we control, we cajole, we maneuver, we twist ourselves into a pretzel. We do whatever we can to get those symbols out there that we don't think we have enough of, or to hold on to the symbols we do have because we're afraid somebody's going to take our symbols away. And But none of that is wealth. And that's why it leads to all the shenanigans and all man's inhumanity to man and conflict, because we are completely off the beam. And instead, we recognize we can circulate those symbols, we can play with them, invest them, but we never have less because the source of it is within us. And when I show people in the Abundance Project, step by step, how to begin to generate this kind of consciousness and this kind of energy, then it will show up as more symbols, more dollars, more opportunities, more work, more creativity, more inspiration. Yep. But it'll be much more than just money. It'll be an abundance in every area of your life.
Before we continue on with today's episode, I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our new sponsor, NOOM. I agreed to do this promo spot because I am super impressed with the futuristic and simple process that NOOM has implemented to revolutionize diet and wellness. NOOM is the unique habit-changing solution that helps users learn to develop a new relationship with food. And it's not a diet. No food is good or bad. As we talk about on the show all the time, it's all about proper balance and having good habits. And NOOM just teaches you how to look inside your own mind and make better decisions for yourself. Sounds familiar, right? It's based in psychology, so I'm personally really excited about starting to use it to understand my own thought patterns better. And they make it super easy to do with a minimal commitment of only 10 minutes a day, which is essential for someone like me with so much on my plate. No pun intended. So if you'd like to take the journey with me and sign up for a trial, head over to noom.com/positivehead to start your trial today. That's spelled NOOM.com/positivehead. I mean, what do you have to lose except outdated habits and perhaps a few extra pounds by signing up for the trial? Once again, NOOM.com/positivehead. Wow. Yeah. And, I think about that even in how it is sort of like the sun. It's indifferent the way this works. I can think of an ex-business partner who is certainly not the most loving individual. And it was a lot about how can I get, and how can I take. But in conjunction with that, he would also spend very frivolously. And so in a sense, he's giving it away a lot too. So you would notice with him, even though he's not really tapped into any of sort of the more, the higher truths pertaining to any of this, just by acting in a way that, constantly spending, it attracted more into his world. You would notice it was like, because that currency, it was a current, it was flowing through him, and it was really indifferent to whether he's a good person or a bad person or any of those things. Right.
Correct.
And I think that's a very powerful thing for people to understand, because a lot of times people look and say, well, hold on, this is they tie these ideals instantly to kind of spirituality and spiritual concepts. But what about these awful people that have all this, symbols of abundance, right?
Correct. Exactly. I do talk about that a lot, actually, because they'll look at certain people that might be in the White House whose name we will not mention or whatever. Right. And depending on, and I remember, as a matter of fact, I remember years ago, a friend who I think had dinner with Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki, because they were working together. Mm-hmm. Robert Kiyosaki is the rich dad, poor dad guy. And it was during a recession, a pretty gnarly one. And what they noticed that was most surprising to them is these men didn't once talk about or complain about the recession. Their entire focus was on opportunity, on creating things, on opportunity. It was just on where's the possibilities, where's the opportunity. And that's a big clue to their mindset. Yeah. And so there's a level of mastery around understanding circulation where it pertains to wealth and in the form of money. And I tell the story about, a realtor and an activist are walking down the street in the city, and they walk by a really bad, broken down, dilapidated lot, in between buildings. And the activist is so angry and heartbroken. Look at what the city has become. Look at where these kids end up playing ball in. This is horrible. This is terrible. Those damn politicians or whatever. And the activist just is angry and mad and hurt. And the real estate developer goes, that could be a good hotel. There could be a hotel there. And a couple years later, 18 months later, whatever, they're breaking ground, or they're building the hotel, or the hotel's been built. And it's now providing employment for dozens and dozens of people, if not, and hundreds of vendors, and adding hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions into the economy, and improving people's lives in very real ways. And cut to the activist, he or she is on to some other thing to be angry and complaining about, and is still struggling and is still broke and is not necessarily making a whole lot of difference. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be an activist. I'm not saying you shouldn't speak truth to power or pseudo power. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm speaking to what you're saying is that there's a skill or a muscle, and again, the principle is not. It's principle. It's not personal. If a bad person was to plant a seed and cultivate the soil to be congruent with the pattern in that seed, it would grow. The soil, the law of emergence can't say, you're a bad person, I'm not going to grow that seed.
Right.
If Hitler learned how to fly a plane and flew it correctly, the law of aerodynamics would work for him as much as it would for Gandhi. So it's so important we understand that life is principle, it's not personal. And this is also why it says in the Bible, and this isn't religious, this is principle. It says God shines its light on the saint and the sinner, lets its rain fall on the just and the unjust. God is no respecter of persons. That's what that's saying. It's saying this presence, this intelligence of the universe, whether you believe in a God or believe in evolution, or both, because they're not mutually exclusive, it's not personal. And so when you understand the principles and apply them, it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't even matter what you're facing. It must operate. And that's why that's mostly what I teach is principles, because principles are forever. Strategies, tactics, technology, data, information, that's always changing. And so you want to build your life, your business, everything on principles. Now you're building it on something that's solid. So that's powerful. It's powerful. Yeah. If you don't know how to swim, and every time you go in the water, you sink, and that's been happening for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Well, if somebody explains the law of buoyancy, shows you how to adjust your body to be in integrity with that principle, does the water say, well, I'm sorry, you've been sinking for a long time, man. It's gonna take,
right.
Or you come from a long line of sinkers, and I'm just afraid it's not in the cards for you. No, of course not. If you know the principle and you know how to align yourself with it, you float. And so that's what we're talking about here today. We're talking about principles, and these people that have great circulation in any area of their life, health, wealth, work, relationships. It's because whether unconsciously or consciously, they've understood and applied the principle. And that's so that way we can get out of our victim story, and we can get out of, putting our good in the future and on delay or thinking it's too late. No, just got to figure out the principle and then start to practice it until it becomes a new habit.
All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. Now, what about the person who's and certainly there's listeners out there who are going to instantly resonate with this. Okay, I'm in a job from hell. I'm not making much money in the job. And so I'm trapped in a sense. I don't see an exit. How does someone activate their potential, and in these scenarios where they feel stuck?
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about this in Emergence as well. And, but it's very, very much the abundance principle. And I've proven this over and over again. I tell the story about how I was, after I had my sort of opening, my spiritual awakening, I ran out of money.
Your story is great, by the way, and you share it in that previous episode 381 I referenced. It's such a good story.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go through the whole story of drowning and almost drowning and all that stuff, but I had to go get a job at one point. And I got a job as a waiter, and it was the job from hell. And I was a former, professional actor doing movies and TV. And here I am waiting on tables. I did it reverse. Instead of going from a waiter to an actor, a successful actor, I went from being a successful actor to a waiter. And people would come in and recognize me. People would come in that I'd been in movies and TV with. And it was humiliating beyond the pale. And
wow.
But I was having an understanding of these principles through my own inner work and all that. And I began to apply it. And what that looked like was I basically got clear on what was the life I really wanted to live. And if I was living that life, who would I be? How would I feel? What would I do? In other words, what would be my habits of thinking, feeling, being, and doing if I was already living it? And then I began to practice that and show up and bring that and circulate that kind of consciousness, energy, qualities right there where I had been planted in that job. And I wrote an article eventually called How I Stopped Waiting and Started Serving, because I was a waiter.
Oh,
and
perfect.
And I began to, another one, ding, ding, a little gold star.
Yeah. Second gold star. You actually get to come back on the third episode now.
That's right. I filled my punch card. I get a free episode now.
Exactly.
So I began to really show up and I began to bring that. And instead of what most people do, which is I'm going to wait to circulate these qualities. I'm going to wait to be excellent. I'm going to wait to be generous. I'm going to wait to be helpful. I'm going to wait to give my all for when somebody gives their all to me, or when they pay me enough, or when it's the right situation, or whatever our story is. And the problem is, as I do say in the Emergence, whatever you're waiting for, you're waiting with and you're weighing it down because it's in you. And so this is also the ultimate weight loss program. And that's not new. I've said that before. So I don't know if I need to get a gold star for that one. But the key is,
I didn't hear it. I don't remember it. So I'm going to give you one.
So it's new.
Since you're on a roll.
But the key is that I began to show up and bring more of me. And as a result, I started to feel better. Now here, it's an interesting story because I ultimately got fired 3 times from that job. And what was happening was, as I kept filling out the space and bringing more of me, it kept not being a match for that particular environment. But I kept growing like it was a gymnasium. I got to work out against the employees that didn't like me, the other waiters that were like, who is this guy making us look bad because he's doing such excellence, and all the temptations for me to squash my excellence and hide my light under a bushel and be less so that I could fit in. All of that I had to work through in order to keep showing up. Whereas most people won't. They'll go, ooh, I can't be great. I can't be big. I can't be excellence. Or I'm going to offend my boss or my employees or my colleagues, or my partner's going to feel uncomfortable and they're going to leave me, or my parents are going to make fun of me, or whatever. And so we don't show up fully. We wait for others or experiences, and we are stuck really permanently until things get so bad we end up changing. But so I began to do that. And eventually I was fired for the third time. When I was fired, they realized it was a mistake and they hired me back. But the third time, finally, we decided to part ways. Within about a month and a half, I was hired speaking and performing and teaching in Fortune 500 companies around the country. And I went from making $50 a day as a waiter to $1,000 and then ultimately $1,500 a day as a consultant and a speaker.
Oh, wow.
And
big jump.
And that happened in a month and a half. So it did not happen during the month and a half while I was out of the job. I built that while I was on the job. And so, and I went from waiting on tables in a 3-star restaurant to being wined and dined around the country in 5-star restaurants. But all of that was the result of me no longer being stagnated, no longer waiting for the future, no longer letting external conditions to determine who I could be and how I could show up. And I just began circulating more excellence, more joy, more inspiration. And I'll tell you, by the time I got fired for the third time, I was so on fire. They fired me, but I was already on fire. I was on fire. I was so inspired. I felt so freaking empowered. I would show up at that job and put on that apron and pull out that thing, and I would go give those people the best freaking service they had ever had. And they said so. I mean, and they wrote to corporate America. Wow. And so I was in my mojo and I felt amazing. And ultimately, that's the state of being that cannot not manifest as more, as abundance, right? So, and I'll give you one other analogy to make this make even more practical sense. If you've got a little plant in a little pot, like in a nursery, and there's bigger pots and then bigger pots, and then eventually there's the field where the giant trees are. Well, if that little plant had self-consciousness and it tried to operate the way most of us do, it would be like looking at its little pot and going, God, this sucks. And looking at the bigger pots and all the fun those bigger trees seem to be having with their fruit and their flowers, and those ones in the field, they have complete freedom. And it would be looking at all that and feeling bad about itself. And, this isn't fair and I don't have much. And one day, hopefully I'll be in a bigger pot. And what's going to happen to that little plant? It's going to stay in the little pot. But if it goes, all right, I want to be in the bigger pots, but this is the pot I've been given. So I'm going to act like a big tree. I'm going to fill out this pot. I'm going to dig my roots as deep as they go. I'm going to spread my branches as high and as wide as I can. I'm going to give all of me here. I'm literally going to fill out the space I'm in. Then what happens? The gardener replants it in a bigger pot over and over until eventually it sets it free in the field. So this is natural. These are natural principles. The opposite of that is if you don't grow and you stop blooming, what happens to a branch that isn't blooming? It gets pruned. What happens to a whole bush that isn't growing? Nature takes it out. And so, the old saying of Jesus cursing the fig tree that's not producing any figs and it dies. It's a terrible example because it seems like what a mean guy, but it's a metaphor. And it's saying, bloom or be pruned. Show up fully or you're never going to get the next best opportunity. Because the way life works is if you take what you've been given and you give it your all and you fill out and invest your life, your time, talent, and treasure fully in the direction of your highest potential, you are now in the process of great circulation. You will start to grow. You'll develop muscles and stamina and resilience and character. And now you're actually ready to move to the next level. And you actually have the instrument and the coil and the structures to handle the next level so that it doesn't destroy you. This is natural. This is how nature not only protects itself, but allows itself to evolve and grow. from a greater and greater expression to an ever greater expression. So if you're in a job you don't like, this is where you asked me, the job from hell, or you're in a relationship that's not working, or you're in a little apartment and you want to have a dream home. I've done this with every single one of these life areas. And when you apply this principle, the combination of the emergence, understanding, and the abundance principle now, you literally can grow yourself out of any limitation and grow yourself into the next better iteration of your life. This is natural.
Wow.
It's principle. It's not personal. Doesn't matter what you've been through or what you're facing. It's a principle.
Wow, that is such a powerful example. And, as you've mentioned, and I often mention on the show, life is happening, through you and for you, not to you. What a great real world example there that you just tied in with what you're teaching, having that opportunity to be in that, from one perspective, humiliating, humbling job, fall from grace, and then to actually from there to gather and gain the perspective to do what you've done. What a powerful real life example and story.
And I've done that. Like I said, I did that in a relationship. I did that in, when we lived in a little apartment and we couldn't even begin to afford a house. And within a matter of a few months, went from there's no way it's possible to moving into our dream home. I did it when I wanted to travel the world as a speaker and a teacher, and I didn't even know where to begin or begin to afford it. And I did that same process. And within a few months, I was booked to travel around the world, all expenses paid, first class, and made tens of thousands of dollars. So, and that was years ago. Everything I teach and that I'm saying, I want people to understand, this isn't theoretical. This isn't
right.
This isn't just some new trendy, even though I can be very clever with my words, this isn't about cleverness. This is about real principles that I first tested in the laboratory of my own life and proved over and over again, and then helped many, many people around the world to do the same. Now, it's not easy.
Yep.
I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying follow these 3 steps and your whole life will be different in 14 days necessarily, although I've seen that happen quite a lot. But I'm saying it because really actualizing your potential, like for real, like no BS here, for real, to really actualize and fulfill your potential the way you were designed, in a way that's sustainable, in a way that promotes and creates greater harmony and balance and order as you expand rather than less. That's not easy to do, which is why very few people do it. And anybody that says, oh, it's easy, follow these 3 steps and you'll be rich, they're either lying or ignorant because they've never actually done it themselves, right? So, or they've had a breakthrough, but they don't really know what caused that breakthrough. They've misinterpreted it, misdiagnosed it. So it's not, it can be, there's some work here. There's some labor of love here, but I will tell you, it's way, way harder and more painful to be broke, to be stagnant, to not have love and abundance and joy and creativity and opportunity flourishing in your life. It's way more painful. You may think it's not temporarily while you're standing at the freezer eating another pint of Haagen-Dazs, but I'm telling you that it is way more painful. And I also speak from experience. I've had my share of Ben & Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs. Chocolate and peanut butter is the best.
Me too.
Just got to say chocolate and peanut butter.
I'm with you on that one.
So it's principles. So if you become a student of these principles, and then what I walk people through in the book is not only understanding the principles from a lot of angles so that it really gets in you, but also how to practically apply them so they become habit, and how to create a way of life so that they eventually become automatic. That's the key. If you don't change your character, you don't change your life. You can't have a new year without a new you. So we have to make these become ultimately habits. And, as Confucius said, all men are alike. It is their habits that are the difference. And from an understanding of how we develop mentally, emotionally, psychologically, our destiny is not determined by conditions. It's determined by our character. And our character is built out of our habits. And our habits are developed based on what we focus on and commit to with consistency. And that is ultimately determined by our core values and our vision, which is ultimately based on our understanding of principles. So we're building something real here. We're building something, again, it's not a trendy little get rich quick new age thing. This is based on studying, researching, and understanding the greatest success stories, the most innovative, successful leaders in every area of life, and then codifying what are the underlying consistent principles that leads to and has led to those results, and then testing it, like I said, in my own life and those of others.
Yeah, I like to say, a little saying that I came up with is be it to see it. And truly that's the same thing that I did when, resonating, getting my sea legs, so to speak, and I think this is part of the process for everyone who's on this path is, becoming aware of this stuff, and you have these good days and good moments, and then you maybe slip into being, less than your fullest potential, days where you're waiting tables and it's like, oh, I'm back to feeling, not good about myself. And, and it sort of can be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But for me, same exact, I always say, listen to this stuff with an open mind and see for yourself. I mean, I was living on my friend's couch, but feeling and knowing that I am capable of creating something great and creating success and abundance. And I grew from a friend's couch to Inc. 569th fastest growing private company in the country with over 100 employees with nothing. Like I didn't have $20 to start with, and it was resonating with the energy beforehand. And that's really, and being it as much as I could. And it's so powerful once you get this, how you're so empowered. You don't feel stuck anymore.
Exactly. I mean, I'm getting chills as you speak, man, because it's like, that's a perfect description of, and you hear a lot of these saying, it takes money to make money. No, it actually doesn't. It's good. You definitely want to circulate your treasure, your money, because if you're not, you want to look at why you're not, is there stagnation? Is there fear? Is there a disbelief that you're going to be supported? Then you want to make sure you're circulating and investing it, whatever you do have. But ultimately, you grew a bigger life out of seeming nothing, out of yourself, out of your own, that invisible substance and mechanism of your own mind and consciousness, which is how all of creation exists and how all of creation happens. You had your own Big Bang, but it was more of a slow cooking Big Bang, right? And with
a few fizzles in there,
right? Little bit by little bit, you were out of the womb of creation. You were pulling out and circulating and expressing and building something. And whether that's you're alone right now and you can't even imagine being in the love of your life, or you're getting out of a long-term relationship and can't imagine ever having it happen again, or you're in a relationship and it's not working. It's the same principle. Whether you're in a body that doesn't seem to be working as well as you want, or you want it, it's the same principle. Whether you're facing a calendar where you don't feel like you have the time and the energy to do what you want to do, it's the same principle. You can begin to start the flow again, get it going get it to a drip, get it to a little drizzle, get it to a nice stream, and eventually it becomes a mighty river rushing downhill without a boulder in sight. And now you've got the flow going in your life. And so it doesn't matter where you are. We just want to get started where you are. And we always want to find a way to lean into and live from that higher idea now, rather than any kind of putting it on layaway or putting it in the future. You can only grow now. You can't grow then. The quality of your moment now, the quality of the practice and the habits you're developing mentally, emotionally, physically now is what determines your then. So It's good stuff, man.
So powerful. And I know we're getting down to our
I
time
can't believe
here.
that. That's crazy. Can't even believe that.
It goes so quick, man. I mean, seriously, you are such an inspiration, and I definitely look forward to checking out your book, and it's just about to be released. And so why don't you tell people a little bit about, first off, guys, I'm going to set it up where you can go and get access to the book. And you also have some programs at positivehead.com/abundance. And this is going to take you to, well, Derek, why don't you explain the offerings that you have?
Absolutely. It's just, I can't even believe it's gone. We need to do like the Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss version, the 2 or 3 hour deep dive.
Dude, I'm in.
Because like we definitely should do a part 2 or something, because it's crazy how we've barely scratched the surface.
Let's do it. Let's get it scheduled. I'm so fired up every time I've connected with you. And so, yeah, more please.
Because there's so much exciting stuff around this. I mean, so much stuff. I mean, even just, first of all, even just the idea of, I would love to talk about the story of money, because money is a story. That's all. And, you know, we talked about money as just a symbol, and, you know, instead of dollar bills, it used to be chickens, and then it was furs. Right. And then people bartered, and they would exchange, you know, this much bread for that much eggs, or this many eggs for that fur. And eventually they couldn't sustain that, because you had to have a storehouse full of bread and it would go bad, and they had to create a medium of exchange. And that was the first bit of currency. The reason we call it salary is because the Romans were paid in salt. So there's a whole story here that we're completely hypnotized by. Yeah, there's so much there. But anyway, so we'll talk about that next time. But
yeah, let's do that. We'll definitely schedule that.
But definitely the book, you know, walks you step by step, you know, the Abundance Project, 40 Days to More Wealth, Health, Love, and Happiness. It walks you through a deep dive understanding of these principles, specific practices, and ultimately how to put it all together into a way of life, into your own abundance project. And who doesn't want to have an abundance project? You know, I kind of wrote it for myself, right? And now is a great time, better time than any. And then the bonuses you get over, I think it's like $1,238. I think that's the right number. And that includes getting into the Abundance Project book club and mastermind, where we're going to be working together to work on and develop your abundance project. It includes getting into live coaching, group coaching with me, so we can work specifically on your abundance project. And it includes various other things like the journaling mastery program, so you can know how to use these principles and use the writing process to more fully activate and develop them. In other words, none of this is fluff. This isn't like, you know, when you see, you get all these bonuses and it's just a bunch of freebie stuff that is just kind of garbage. These are actual programs and products and coaching, live coaching that people otherwise pay for. But I put it all together into this package because I don't want this book to just become more shelf help, where you walk by your shelf and point to it and say, look at how awesome I am. I have all these awesome books, but you haven't actually lived them and gotten the results. So we want it to be real. I want you to get real results. I want this to be the most abundant year of your life. And because my bigger mission is that if people are more connected to their real power and their real source, because most conflict, most suffering is based on the belief that our support is outside of us, that when you realize it's within you and you know how to live it in a practical way, a lot of the suffering and conflict and struggle will start to go away. So it's bigger than just paying your rent, although that's a big piece to it. It's about becoming free. And when you're free, you now, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are free to be more of you and to make a bigger impact in the world and your family and leave a lasting legacy.
So powerful, Derek. I definitely am going to be checking all of the stuff out myself. And for you guys, once again, positivehead.com/abundance. And this will take you to, everything that Derek just mentioned if you're interested in diving deeper. And we'll certainly dive deeper on another episode. If you're game for that, I definitely am.
Absolutely. They can also check out the new podcast, The Abundance Project, just for more little tidbits. But yeah, we're going to dive deeper, and we'll we'll dive into stuff I haven't shared elsewhere. And so definitely tune in for that, guys.
Excellent. Well, we'll be doing that soon. And Derek, thank you, my friend. You have definitely delivered as always, as I knew you would. I've even got some new, very, very clever sayings to add to my repertoire. For that, I'm grateful. I am grateful for all that you do. You're an inspiration.
Thank you, my brother. Likewise. And I look forward to connecting with all of you in some way, shape, or form. This is going to be an abundant year.
Indeed, it already is. And till next time, journey well. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.